Welcome back to the Generational Rundown. We're here with Morgan, and I think it's been like 3 years, 2 or 3 years. You were one of our first ever interviews, and we're doing this month basically mental health, positivity. Last month we did business owners, and now we're doing the whole month of, just the whole idea of how people function mentally and physically, and how, certain things in their life can draw them to another direction. So going back to when we first met you, I know I think you had just started with the horses in Florida. I think we interviewed you. Is that correct, Alexandra? When you had first moved out to Ocala. Is that right, Alexandra?
So I've actually been I worked with horses when I lived in Miami, but I was drawn to Ocala because it's horse country.
Right.
So in Miami, you would have to drive 45 minutes to do work with horses because you had to leave the city. And in Ocala, it's just right here.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about how, since we last talked to you, how things have evolved and what you've seen that's, been a surprise for you, some maybe disappointments, and just overall how things are going in this new adventure of yours?
I love, 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 love living in Ocala. So I feel like for the listeners to just wrap their head around, like, when you feel called to something, when you feel called to start a new chapter, when you feel called to end a chapter, to listen, because that was really the theme of our last conversation too, right? Alexandra was moving to Cali to pursue her dream. I was moving to Ocala because I was really feeling called to this new space, this new place. Here, the energy is more grounded. It has, there's horses everywhere. There's animals. I stay on horse farms with my travel van. It's allowed me to do exposure training with Teddy for a variety of animals. It's been really fun to have that journey with him too, and see that. I've met some like soul family that I just feel so deeply nourished by. I feel like, my life has been really rewarded by me listening to my intuition. And one of the things we talked about last time, I think, was the fact that I didn't know why I was being called to Ocala. So the thing is, you can look at what I'm doing now and go, oh, it was because of the horses. It was because of this. And it's like, I don't always know why my intuition is guiding me to something. I usually find out the why after. And if we can really trust that and take some steps towards that, I think it really radically transforms our life. And I just am so deeply surrendered to walking my path that way that magic always unveils itself to me. And yeah, and so I don't think I've had any disappointments, really. Nothing where I'm like, oh, I really wish I didn't do this. It's been just unveiling one golden nugget after another. And I still feel very rooted here. I still feel like, yes, it's this place or something like this place that has just so much nature. In Central Florida, I didn't realize like how many springs were here. The other day I went to the beach. It's like an hour and a half drive to the beach. The springs, it could be like a 20-minute drive to one spring, 30-minute drives to another spring. So I'm just constantly surrounded by this nature, which for me at this phase of my life, for my mental health, is so nourishing to just be grounded, really being with nature, allowing nature to just hold me and cleanse me. And I think we're starting to see that more, where people are waking up to realizing how nourishing nature can be.
100%. I know in a couple of weeks, we're going to be interviewing a man that gave me a private walking tour, my daughter and I hiking in Sedona. We went to Sedona recently, my younger daughter and I, and so we'll be having him on the podcast later in this month about how he changed his whole calling from, being a businessman, getting his master's, and then going into nature and just loving. He's in Peru right now doing guided tours and single one-on-one. So you really made a leap of faith, right? Because you started out, weren't you from Chicago originally? Weren't you born in Chicago?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the suburbs of Chicago. I actually love Midwest people. I really loved so much about Chicago, but I don't like the winter. I run cold. I'm in Florida. I'm wearing a fuzzy little sweater. So, and it's hot outside.
I know, I can imagine. I'm like, Morgan, you
Yeah.
get this
Well,
sweater.
it's the air conditioning, right? But it's also like my air conditioning's at like 75 and I'm wearing a sweater,
So,
just to
yeah.
give you an idea of that, right? So my bones were like, hey girl, you need some warmth. So yeah, I packed up. I left Chicago because my soul really called me and whispered me towards Florida. I landed in Miami and I was there for how many years was I? I think I was there for 4 years.
Wow.
And that chapter really served me. It was amazing. I met some amazing people like yourself, Alexandra. I had a wonderful time. I feel like being around the ocean, that was something that was just, I would go there so frequently. And yeah, and then once the chapter closed, I just had to listen to it. But what's been really neat too is I'm not a one or the other person. I'm not an either or. I've always been really guided to the yes and. So it wasn't like moving to Ocala meant I had to let go of the work I was already doing with people. It was
Right.
like, yes, and right. Like, so I still do a lot of really amazing work with humans.
I was going to
And
ask you that, Morgan. I was going to
I know
say,
I can feel it, girl. I'm an intuitive.
oh my gosh, I was going to ask you that question.
You
I
don't
Honestly,
even
know.
have to ask the questions. You're answering.
that's, you're going in the direction I was going to ask you about. Are you still working with the individuals as well?
Yeah.
Because you have so much nature right there. You're probably doing it outside.
So what's really cool is, so I still, I do virtual sessions with people, with individuals. I also do virtual sessions with couples, really assessing like how they're communicating, how they can do conflict resolution, really assessing where they're missing each other. Really enjoyed that work. I also work with humans and their animals. So not this weekend, but the past weekend, this weekend I was out playing. The weekend before that, I, went and talked to some humans and their horses and just really answer whatever questions that they have. And then I also will host occasional live events where they come to Ocala, where people come to Ocala. And we do a little balance of they're going to get coaching from me, intuitive coaching. And then they're also going to get maybe doing some work with the horses where using someone else's horses that can hold space with me to hold space for the humans. And then obviously being in nature, maybe go to some different nature spots and things like that. So yeah, I've just keep adding on. It isn't like I've stopped doing something. I might have altered how I'm doing something or tweak how I'm doing something, but I definitely still work with humans. And now I work with animals and sometimes I incorporate nature. So it's a yes and.
And did you get the van? Tell us more about the van. What was that all about? You added a van to this lifestyle.
Yeah, so that was all intuition. I kept seeing a vision of a van and I didn't know why. I started off thinking I was going to I'll just get like a minivan, and put something in the back of it. And that is not what I ended up being guided to. I was essentially guided to like a condo on wheels, like a little studio on wheels. I've got a kitchenette, I've got 2 beds, I've got a bathroom. Like it's it's amazing. And that has allowed me the freedom to be able to do my work anywhere. That has also allowed me the freedom to, if I'm feeling called to like write, I write books and different things. So if I'm writing and I feel like that writing wants to be done in a space that is like out in the middle of a field, so it's undivided attention. I'm not distracted by needing to clean the house or do anything at the house or it's been really profound. Sometimes I'll go out and I'll do sessions while I'm in the van. So I can kind of pick a location that would be good for that as well. Going to do animal communication sessions on different horse farms, I bring the van, so it's like I always have a cocoon and a little cozy spot that I can work from anywhere. I can adventure to anywhere. I can do animal communication sessions anywhere. It's really opened up my world a lot and I absolutely love it. But again, I had to really surrender to my intuition, even though I didn't know how I was going to use it fully and I didn't know why fully. And then now I keep getting unveiled all the ways that I'm using it. And for anyone who sees my adventures, like I'm literally living my best life. Like I'm having the time of my life.
That's amazing. Well, when you say you never know what your why is until after it happens, do you get messages or signs concrete of being like, yes, this is one reason, this is another, or is it more of just a feeling you have as you're going on the journey?
You get your concrete reasons after you take the step, not before.
Yes, but
So
after, do you feel like you have like, okay, this was one of the reasons, this was another, or is it kind of more feelings?
no, after I definitely clearly see. Like afterwards, I'll be experiencing something and then I'll hear this like little whisper, like, see this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, totally this, right? Like that was brilliant. Beforehand, it's all just I'll get a message. I have all of my clairs activated. So like the clairsentience, I'm feeling, the clairaudience, I'm hearing, all the clairs, right? So the knowing, the seeing, the hearing, the feeling, they're all very active for me. So I have like a symphony of ways that I receive information. And with the van, I would visually see the van. I just knew like when this might sound strange, but this is my language. When I met the van, I just knew it was the van. Similar
Like
to, yes, exactly. When I met Teddy, my dog, I knew he was the one that was going to journey with me. Yeah. So, but I didn't know, you don't know until you know. And I think that's the part that with intuition that sometimes people struggle with is they're like, well, I don't know, so I might be doing it wrong. And it's like, yeah, but also like maybe you just don't know yet because you don't know. And when you know, you'll know. It's hard to trust that. I see that a lot with dating as an example, or like selecting a person. They're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, oh, you'll know character wise, like you'll just know when someone's different if you're paying attention. But we often don't want to go through the work of having to do the selection. Yeah. So we kind of rush it and then we ignore it. We kind of like hold a red flag and we're like, in any scenario, right? And we're like, well, maybe I could dress this up, versus like, okay, if it's not aligned, I'm just going to trust that and I'm going to keep going.
So your intuition really keeps you honest and keeps you focused. And it's a gift to have your intuition because you really use that intuition to guide your life, Morgan, right? I mean, that's such a gift right there. You know, I mean, people they can't make decisions or they don't want to look at the intuition. They want to just sort of have blinders on. I think that you'll probably see that in a lot of your humans, right? That they have that barrier.
Well, people might not trust their intuition too is a really big problem because I think everyone has it, but in order to bring it out and find it, I think a lot of people might suppress it or not listen to it or not know how to navigate even finding it.
Yeah. So as an example, I just got goosebumps when you said that. And I also teach intuition development. Well, it's like when we ignore it because we're intentionally like, oh, I don't want to hear it. Right. I remember being in Chicago. I was in a relationship for 3 years with someone that I like really cared about. And I heard you're gonna like this relationship is at its expiration.
Right.
I need you to move to Miami. I need you to like remove all of your comfort blankets and just trust, right? Like who wants to hear that?
Right.
Right. So it would have been easier-ish, right? Easier by the definition of I wouldn't have had to do the work. Easier, I wouldn't have had to leave the relationship. Easier, I wouldn't have had to grieve. Easier, I wouldn't have had to move, pack, all the things. But is that really what's easier? Right? Because if we stay in something when our intuition tells us it's time to go, we're making our life a lot harder. Right. And I just mean that's a microcosm, right? That could be a decision with a career. That could be a decision with a friendship. So yeah, who wants to hear, I need you to change. I need you to let something go. I need you to do something scary. So when I hear these intuitive hits, I'm not like, oh yes, this is going to be great. At first I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Like I can struggle with it, right? But I know how to allow the duality of the struggle and the joy to coexist. I know how to allow the discomfort and the magic to dance together because I have so many reference points about, so, you know, we're talking, you had mentioned at the beginning, mental health, right? I have so many reference points when I don't listen, how much it really negatively impacts my mental health. And then I've had so many reference points where when I do listen to that voice, and we all have it, we can all cultivate it, where it's led me to just like a pristine ability to have the mental and physical health that is needed in order to have vitality, to be able to live life instead of just survive it.
That's a very good point. But I guess also, I don't know if you would think about this as well, as there, like when we analyze things versus we have intuition for things. So like I analyze a lot. Is that because I have good intuition? I would like to think I have good intuition, and I think I pretty much do, but I also am a huge analyzer. You know, my dad was a psychiatrist. I have a social work background. So I'm wondering, because I analyze things a lot, does that give me the power to be intuitive? Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I understand your question. I hate to break it to you, but no. Analyzing is your head. And you
Okay.
cannot hear your intuition if you're in your chatter.
Okay.
Our heads, our minds, when we analyze, it oftentimes is actually trying to protect us from hearing our intuition, because it thinks that our intuition is going to be too scary, too much change, too much work.
Okay.
And that can create anxiety.
Like my anxiety right now currently is our dog. Our dog, believe it or not, our wonderful Shih Tzu, he's 17.
Jojo.
And it's breaking my heart. I'm trying to be in the moment and just enjoy him. And I remember thinking 5 years ago, oh my gosh, she's 12. He's going to die. Now he's 17. But now I see a huge decline. He still has quality, but he seems like he's got kind of like a dementia, because he'll be just staring into space. He doesn't bark. I'll leave him in the kitchen. Sometimes, other times I let him roam in the house, but he just will drop a poop or just stand there in the middle of the air, you know, looking, and his vision is not good. So that causes me to analyze constantly. And everyone's like, you have to just be in the moment and just be with him and just enjoy. It's a gift. But at the same time, my God, it's like so scary to think of not having him in our lives. So
Yeah. So 100% validating it. Your brain is trying to protect you from your grief.
yeah,
Right?
I
Which,
get even like the, you know,
But why
yeah,
even
for
bring
sure.
that up? I mean, why not just live in the moment? I feel like we had this conversation 3 years ago. You haven't made any progress since, when you said you had anxiety.
now it's now more real.
Yes,
Now
but why go 3-4 years having the same thoughts?
I
What
know.
good does that serve you?
Well, I think my intuition was that he wasn't going to make it back then. I was shocked how much better he was back then when I thought he wasn't going to make it versus
Okay.
what we see. And I'm doing everything. Like he's on Morgan. When I tell you, I give him medicine 10 different times a day.
Yeah.
And
So
that doesn't include the eye meds.
let me just validate something, because this is going to be really important for listeners. We all overanalyze things when we're in fear. That's not, it's hard to just be like, just be positive. Just
Yeah.
don't think about it, right?
Right.
When I'm in fear, I overanalyze for sure. And then I have a hard time discerning between what's fear and what's intuition. And it's not even that I have a hard time discerning. It's that maybe I don't want to hear the intuition, so I let the fear get louder. But yeah, it can be hard. And I have a really strong partnership with my intuition. I've cultivated that for like very intensely and masterfully for the past decade, but even more, you know, since I was a kid, I was very multidimensional. So I say that because it's important for people to not shame themselves when they are in their head.
Yeah.
Like, man, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? It's, if you can give yourself some grace, it's like, well, the question I would ask myself in that situation is like, what does my brain think it's trying to protect me from? So like, as an example, if you're trying to like walk yourself into connection and you're afraid of connection, then your brain is going to be like, cool, let me help you. Connection isn't safe. Let me help you by overthinking. And then maybe you'll sabotage. Right. So, which is really common.
Right.
Your brain thinks it's helping you, by analyzing, but really what's happening is it's robbing you of the very thing that you want, which is time with him.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's a softer way to remind yourself like, oh, my brain is trying to keep me safe. Thank you. And you're robbing me of the very thing I want, which is presence. So then you can actually walk into presence with grace instead of walking into presence like beating yourself up.
Good point. Yes, it's really good distinction. Because like what Alexander was saying, yeah. And also like when I think back, you're right, Alexander, because like 5 years ago, I'm like worried. And look, he's still here. So, but it's that fine line between the brain trying to prepare and to accept, but also to be in the moment and enjoy. It's that crazy.
The brain is not trying to, the brain is telling you it's trying to prepare you, but it's actually trying to prevent you from feeling your feelings.
Oh, okay.
So it's trying to, like, if I think I don't have to feel.
Right.
Right. So in your mind's like, look, I'm helping you because I'm helping you prepare for the worst.
Right.
Which it is. Like, that's literally the brain's like, cool, destination, what's the worst thing that could happen here? And then I'm gonna just spend all my time here troubleshooting something that's not happening.
Right.
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 And then in moments like that, or any moment, I find you to be a very positive person. And I love the mindset that you've always put out ever since I met you. What are some tips to almost change and shift your perspective to have a more positive outlook, even if you're in situations like this where, yes, your dog is older, or I was told by a friend who is a psychic medium, she said the universe is always listening. So if you're sitting here being like, I hate my job, I hate my life, the universe is affirming, yes, you hate your job, you hate your life, because the universe gives. It's always, they will give and they will, yes, 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 you. But if you're saying the wrong things or thinking the wrong patterns, then you're just going to get more of that negativity. And whether that's just being in your head or you actually are going to start attracting that negativity in all those areas, what advice do you have to combat that?
Live as much as you can in the now moment. So if something happens, deal with it in the now moment.
Mm-hmm.
If your neural pathways are constructed in a way where you're constantly going to the future of what might happen, then you're spending your really powerful energy that could be spent, as an example with Jojo, could be spent with your animal in the here and the now, loving on him, like what's actually happening right here. He's still here.
Right.
Right.
So
You
like
know what
what's
it is?
actually happening?
What happens for me personally is that, and Alexander, we're all obsessed with our dog. And I know you've done such a great job with your dog, Teddy. For me is when there's a setback or something happens in his health, it's not like I'm just like, oh, he's old, I'm worried. It's when something, like we had a rough week last week.
What's happening is the brain can take one thing that's not fine and turn it
Right.
and amplifies it. Because
Right.
here's what you did. Something happened in the moment, which is true. So deal with the now moment, what's actually happening. But what I just heard you say that you're not fully realizing is something happened in the moment. And then I went to, oh my God, what if, and da da da, and in the future, and then what if he died, right? So he's not dead,
Right.
right? He's still here. And there was an issue. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna be present in the issue. I also want to validate though, if you go into the future, it's not like your brain's wrong or bad. So as an example, do I sometimes, I think all dog parents do this, or all animal parents, do I sometimes think about my worst day on earth, which is when Teddy crosses and I cry? You bet your ass I do. Why does the brain do that? I have no idea. But do I do that? Absolutely. Then I take that energy and I reframe. So Alexander, similar to you, it's like, what's the thought? So the thought that brings me back to the now moment that helps me really anchor in love is the amount of grief I feel means that that's the amount of love that is in this being. And then I'm like, I'm just going to pour my love into him. Right. And so grief really is love that has nowhere to go, but they're still here. So we can still pour the love in.
Yeah.
Right. So when we go into the grief, it's understandable. It's normal. I think it's natural. I think every parent, whatever capacity of parent they are, I think they all do it. Even with our animal babies. And so, yeah, it's like, learning to train your brain to be in service to you is really important. And one of the ways to do that is exactly what Alexandra said. It's like, well, what do I actually want? And what are the thoughts in alignment with what I want? And if I want to feel like I'm really taking the time to be present in my current life, then it's learning to like, what are the questions that bring you back, right? Or what are the thoughts or the mantras or things that you can kind of ground into that bring you back? As an example, gratitude is an amazing way, right? So I think like the quickest and easiest way is to really look at what am I grateful for in my life? So similar to what you said, Alexandra, is if you're speaking to the universe and saying, I'm so grateful for this, the universe brings you more of that. If you're like, oh my gosh, I really appreciated this, the universe brings you more. Sometimes I always reflect at the end of my day. And sometimes one of the questions I'll ask myself is like, what was the magic that I noticed today? What was the beauty I noticed today? What was I grateful for today? What do I appreciate today? I see this a lot with couples where they start focusing on the things they don't want. And it's like, okay, cool. Why don't for the next week or two, you just look at what are 3 things you appreciate about the person and you share that. And that can be in any relationship. That could be a parent's relationship, parent-child. That could be with your spouse, your partner, your friend. We can get to the point where we start focusing on what's agitating us, what's making us angry. Like I know for me, when I'm angry, all the good can fall away. Right? I may not even see the gratitude. I may not even see the green flags of this, whatever's happening in the situation. And so it's really it takes practice to ask yourself, well, what do you want? What are you grateful for? What's happening in this now moment that is the beauty that you would be missing if you're overanalyzing? But again, if we think overanalyzing is bad and we shame ourselves, we're just going to get more of the overanalyzing. And so instead it's like, okay, what are the anecdotes to overanalyzing? Gratitude is an anecdote to the poison.
That is so true. What about when you put in all the work and you, like, for example, I thought I was going to have a job. I journaled it every day. I manifested it. I put so much effort into it and then I didn't get it. And then, but I'm like, people say, well, that doesn't happen because that wasn't your path, right? Something else is coming, something that you're meant to be. But even sometimes people have, and it didn't deter me. I just hit the ground running, manifesting something else. Maybe I don't journal as much as I did. I put a lot of effort into journaling that, but I've made vision boards. I try to say affirmations out loud. But what are some ways you would tell people to not get discouraged and not get down? Because I do think that could also affect your mental health. If you're trying to be positive, you do all the things right, and then the results aren't what you expected.
Well, because I have watched you, I've had front row seats to your life. You did get what you wanted. It just wasn't how you thought it was going to look.
Right.
Because what you really wanted was be able to have the opportunity to do a lot of the on-air work that you love. Mm-hmm. You manifested that.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen in the package you thought it was supposed to happen. I think that's honestly the thing that robs us of the most joy in life is if we think it has to happen a certain way and we're in control of how it happens and how it looks. Whereas if you zoom out a little bit, you're like, okay, but what did I actually want? Right? So if I want to manifest a property, well, like, what is it you're trying to manifest? Oh, I want more peace. I want more space, more I want, something to pour my creativity into, right? Like, and then you get things like that. Maybe instead it's like instead of a property, maybe it's all of a sudden a person comes in and is able to honor that in even higher capacity that a property would have. I know that sounds abstract, but and so same thing with your job. It's like, okay, I'm really looking for a job that's this, and I'm going to build this exact thing. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to give you a piece of what you asked over here and a piece of what you asked over here. And then the brain's like, yeah, but I want it to look how I want it to look. And then you start to try and control. And then you're in your brain again.
Right.
Right? Because control is brain.
Yeah. And so people get really stuck in that. Like it has to look a certain way, but it is really hard to get off of that once you've envisioned something for yourself. So that really is a skill.
Yeah, because we also, self-included, right? I'm human too. So we start to doubt. We start to go, oh man, did I do that wrong? Did I get it wrong? Did I do something wrong? Maybe if I'd done a different versus like, later, so this is why I feel like journaling in retrospect is so important. If you retroactively look back and you say, okay, I didn't get that thing, maybe it's 6 months later, because usually that gives you enough time. Well, how did the universe honor what I wanted, but maybe in different ways? And that question starts to help you realize, like, if I had that thing I wanted exactly as it was, I wouldn't have these other things, right? So not get like that door closing was actually in service to me. I feel like the questions we ask ourselves can either expand us or limit us. Control will always limit us. Thinking that we're wrong or going into shame will always limit us. Gratitude will always expand us. Looking for a reason, maybe that's the wrong word. Looking for the blessing in a situation, looking for the wins in a situation, looking for how the universe had our back, it expands us, right? And so, and you can feel it. You can feel when you're contracted. You can feel when you're anxiety. Anxiety is you're in the past or the future, you're not in the present moment. Easier said than done. So I do understand all of that, right? I don't believe that it's like snap your fingers, airy fairy, and then you go into this place and you never have thinking again, right? Thinking is beautiful. Thinking can be in service to us. It's just there's loops that we can get stuck in that aren't in service to us that can impact our mental health. And it's just being aware of like focus on one tiny little step you can take to expand your mind. It really helps versus thinking I need to like do these 10 things. It's like, okay, but even if it's like just gratitude journal, 3 things in the morning and 3 things at night, like that will really start to develop a neural pathway that is a highway that is like, I'm looking for things to be grateful for. Right. And people, yeah.
I'm sorry. I had a thought where you were talking about taking it a step further with the animals. So if you're dealing with a person trying to get them to have that type of path, does that sometimes help in their duality with their animal? Like, do you sometimes feel like you have to give like a mentorship or some type of guidance to the human to interact with the animal so that the animal picks up? Like, how does the animal receive their energy? Like, does that, in other words, you work with
Like if
animals
your
that
human's anxious, is your animal anxious?
right,
I think
exactly.
so.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of all this stuff that we're doing with one-on-one people, and then if you take it a step further and you bring that animal in, and you're now dealing with the animal's anxiety and the person, like, is that the same? It can't be exactly the same focus, right? The person has to take the lead to help the animal.
Yeah, the animal's not the animal's the absorber. The animal's
Right.
helping clean your energy. The animal's mirroring things back to you. They're on
Right.
team you. So, like as an example, I worked with this guy who had 13 horses and every single one of them had tight hips. This was like one of the first, where I was working with like a big herd. And, one day I was like, I asked the human, do you have tight hips? And he was like, oh yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, all of them are trying to help you. And they're all absorbing the energy, trying to clear it. But then they all needed their hips stretched. So then I taught him how to stretch his hips.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible.
So when you have like a larger group of beings, you see the patterns. Whereas when it's one, well, so no, I'm flashing back to, there was an animal communication session I did where the animal was absorbing into one of the organs. I can't remember which one it was, but I felt it, the animal showed me, and I did not know this about the human. So I asked the human if she had an issue with that particular organ, and she said, yes, I do. And I said, this dog plus another dog who had already crossed over were both dealing with this because they were both present. And I said, it is essential, like essential that you work on cleansing and clearing whatever's going on in that organ, because all of your animals are trying to help you, but it's making them really sick.
That's fascinating. Wow.
And not to say like, oh my gosh, you're doing something wrong. I don't want people to hear that and then feel bad. It's just understanding our animals are really trying to help us. And so, same thing with, telling myself so that we all know we're friends here. When I first got Teddy, he had a really hard time with impulse control. He still struggles. He gets excited. But I can struggle with impulse control and I can get a little too excited. Right. And so helping him helps me, and he's helping me help him, right? Like it's this infinity symbol. Animals are so symbiotic. If you pour into an animal, they pour right back into you. So when I started to learn how to, when I was doing training with Teddy, I would watch him cross a threshold. And when he crossed, he would have a hard time coming back if he was like excited, like an arousal threshold or an impulse control, like he just couldn't bring it back. But as the repetition of something more and more and more, he could cross the threshold and come back and cross the threshold and come back. And honestly, I didn't know that was possible. I always thought, like, I had a story in my head, like once I cross the threshold, it's too late. Like I'm already over a threshold, whether it's anxiety, whether it's like feeling something super intensely, whether it was, I'm like eating junk food and it's like, forget it, I'll just keep going, right? Whatever it is. But in working with him on his impulse control, it showed me a mirror that you can cross and come back, even when you're already sparked. So they're just such great teachers.
That's amazing. I'm gonna throw out a wild theory. Is our dog always hungry because our dad is always hungry?
It could very well be. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
it could
even
very,
kidding.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not even
seriously.
kidding.
Seriously,
Oh my
it could very
God,
well be.
Alexandra.
I'm not even kidding. I'm like, oh God, I think I found the reason.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, for sure.
Get a little lighthearted.
She said yes.
Yeah, for sure. It's also, there's a little, when it's a
Oh, yeah.
family animal, like it's a little bit more, it could be a family affair, right? So that
Right.
animal is helping absorb all the things. I know, let me give you a tangible example. I did an animal communication session with someone whose dog would throw up a lot. And I said, your animal is clearing energy. There's too much intensity of energy in your house and no one's clearing it. Like clearing it would be if you're upset with one of your kids about something, instead of yelling. Well, you can, I mean, okay, maybe you cross your threshold, you're yelling, whatever. And then you come back and you clean the energy. You come back, you're like, hey, I'm really sorry about that. Or hey, let's talk about that. It'll clean it. Avoiding things can create a lot of intense energy. And the person was like, well, what can I do to clear the energy beyond that too, right? And I was like, you could do sage, right? Because sage will just really help start to cleanse some of the energy so he doesn't have to do it all for you. So she started implementing, there were a couple of other things that I shared that she could do specifically with her family. And she started implementing those and the animal stopped throwing up.
Wow.
And then when she'd get out of the practice of clearing the energy, the animal would start throwing up again. So she'd go, oh, the animal's throwing up again. And I'm like, well, what, have you stopped doing your stuff? And she's like, yeah, I did.
Wow.
Less anxiety in the household and Jojo will be a happier little dog. That's so
Yeah,
easy, the correlation.
That is
yes.
amazing.
But it's so true because it's like they're sponges and they absorb the energy. And all of those examples prove it. It's amazing how my dad, he does Reiki now a lot more than I think before, but you already knew that. Like I think he first started when we met you, but now he's practicing all the time. Him and this woman opened up like a little place they go around and do it. And they want to get more customers. And he was saying, everybody's energy, we can just see you and me and forms, but there's literally everything is energy. So it's so true. People think it's cliche when you say, oh, I don't get good energy from that person, or I need to be careful who I allow in my energy. It is so true because especially people like you and me who are like more empathic or can feel emotions, it's very hard not to become a sponge and pick up on other energy.
Okay, the number one thing I say to someone who is an empath, who can really feel other people's energy and absorb it, like you could be in a great mood and you go to the grocery store and someone was in a funky mood, you didn't even interact with them and now you feel like crap, right? Like this can happen. So what I say is use your superpower, use that as a superpower. And what I mean by that is find people that you'd love to absorb their energy and be around them. So you don't even have to change.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. There are other things you can do where you can bubble or broadcast energy instead of receiving. You could actually say, what do I want to tune into when I'm out? Or what do I want to broadcast when I'm out? There are things you can do. But the very first thing that would be like the easiest shift is, who are the people that would feel really good to be around? Or what's the music that would feel really good? Or what shows feel really good? The worst thing we could do is like filter our mind. Like the mind wants to really get high on the news, right? the mind's like, yeah, give me all these things to overanalyze. The body is like, please, for the love of unicorn and sparkles, do not subject me to something that is intentionally trying to create chaos in my field.
Right.
Chaos can be like a train wreck, right? And we watch it. Got to see what's going on versus like, no, what are the things that would feel really good? So for mental health and positivity, what's the music that feels good? What's the food that feels good? Who are the people that feel good? A lot of people who are sensitive in their nervous system, sometimes we feel guilty if we're not helping people, or if we need distance from someone, or man, I notice that person kind of drains me, but they're my friend, but they need my help or whatever. And it's just important to remember, like, you matter too. And you can't actually help someone if you're not full.
Right. They're draining your energy.
Yeah. And so it's important that we constantly create, I call it like an energy management plan and not constantly create, but that we're consistent with an energy management plan where we know what gives us energy, what nourishes us. My life pretty radically transformed when I allowed myself to feel how I feel when I'm around people and reallocate spending my number one currency, which is energy, with people that felt really good. There was this question I started implementing when I was around people that really changed things for me. Like sometimes we're like, oh, how do I like that person? And our brain starts to want to analyze, do I like externally, we're analyzing the person. And so when I started to ask myself, one of my friends, like one of my closest friends, she sent me this list of 8 questions. And one of the first ones is, how do I feel in the presence of this person? And then it was like, how did my nervous system feel? Did I feel dysregulated? Did I feel regulated? Did I feel bored? Did I feel captivated? Like, you start to tune into how you feel. And as an empath, that's so important because it allows you to look at your information for your mental health instead of always looking at, oh, how did that person feel? What did that person need? And you start to, instead of analyzing the person, you're analyzing yourself. And that's been a really big game changer for me too. Because if I don't feel great, like, that's okay. Well, maybe I don't spend time, or maybe I decrease the time, or, it really helps me give intelligent information that I need to really ensure that I'm prioritizing my own mental health. It's hard to be positive if your mental health is not taken care of.
Yeah. And I feel like there's certain friends who you can just sit around and do nothing with. And it must be that type of basis of, that your energy is just in sync with theirs. Cause I just feel like there are definitely those friends who, like, I literally can sit next to and do nothing and I can be open to. And there's other friends who might be more of a chore to hang out with, or, more of like, I don't know, an effort in a way, or you need a limited amount of time and then you're good to go type of thing. So it's so interesting because that probably all stems back to your energies are just in sync. And then I also think about the signs. Do you think that really has anything to do with it? Zodiac signs? Do you feel like certain signs mesh better, or is it more just honestly energy?
It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have been a little bit more curious recently of kind of looking at the patterns and themes. And sometimes I'm like, wow, like that sign, I enjoy being their friend, but I could never date them. And I won't say the sign because I don't want to insult my friends that are that I love my friends, but it's like, oh, it just wouldn't be compatible with me. At the end of the day, I try not to get too lost in the signs, because that would also make my head think instead of make my body feel.
Right.
So, because, like, as an example, I usually get along really well with other Libras, right? But like, if I intellectualize that and I meet someone and they're a Libra, I might try to make myself like them, even though my energy is like, man, I'm tired around this person. So it is fun. I do like that. I like to play. And if I have to pick between analyze and feel, personally, I go to feel, because energy never lies. Let me back up. Feelings can lie, emotions can lie, but energy never lies. So if you learn how to feel the energy, that's what I mean. I don't necessarily also mean like, you can feel, how does this person make me feel emotionally? But sometimes that's a transient question. And
How
that's
can you
why,
deliberate between the two? Which one is feeling and which one is energy? Like, how do you know you're feeling energy and not your feelings? Because I definitely am very emotional and I get really in my feelings and I think a lot. And I follow my feelings a lot, but an emotional thinker, right? But how do you differentiate what's your emotions and what's your just the energy that you're feeling?
well, the fact that you said emotional thinker tells you it's brain. Energy is like literally, how does my body feel?
Okay. Wow.
How am I energized? Am I depleted? Sometimes everyone's going to answer a little bit different, but sometimes people are like, I don't know, something's off. Sometimes the energy is like, man, I'm really drawn to learn more. How do you differentiate? I'm just going to go a little bit deeper into that. It feels like the pathway out of head is into the body. So if you could check in with how your body feels, that's going to be a really good way to differentiate, because what I just heard you say is your emotions are coming from the brain, which can happen sometimes, right? An emotion could be like, oh man, that person triggered something inside me and now I'm feeling it. But that's not that person's. It's like someone from the past that's triggering that, or something from the past. Whereas if you feel into how does your body feel, it actually gets you out of the thought process, right? It's similar to like, if you want to spend less time in your head, spend more time in your body.
So true.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's very, very technical. It's very hard to differentiate because I feel like I'm always analyzing. And again, I don't know if that was my training and a combination of my personality, having a father that was a psychiatrist, analyzing. But yeah, not growing up in a household of the energy, but more of the headspace. Whereas my husband doing the Reiki, he's so much evolved into this energy. And now he's doing a rising horse. He
No,
got
rising star, right?
rising star. I'm saying horse because of you.
I know.
I'm sorry. Rising star. He did a special training of all day training in rising star. So he just did that on JoJo the other day when I
Because he
was
wants to
worried.
help animals. He's doing a lot of Reiki on animals, which is so incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Some people, I think, I don't know. I think, well, Morgan can answer, but I do think it's a combination of personality. I think some people definitely have an easier time letting their energy lead them and surrendering to that. And it's hard to break the habit of being stuck in your train of thought and the thinking, the overthinking.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm really big on studying neuroplasticity, which is how to re-architect and re-engineer the brain, right? Literally the neural pathways. Because imagine you've walked a path enough times that there's a well-trodden path there. So we just go there because that's the easiest thing to do because it's what we practice. Intuitively, what comes to mind is I saw this video once where this little kid was like talking about emotions so simply, and it was so beautiful. And he said, yeah, people who are angry a lot, they've just practiced being angry. People who are happy a lot, they've practiced being happy. And it's so simple. And it's like our brain wants to make it harder than it is. But if you want to create happiness as more of a pattern in your life, you have to practice it like it's a muscle, like you're going to the gym. So if you watch a video of neuroplasticity, you'll watch the energy of it where it's like two separate pieces that are trying to connect and they're trying to connect and they're trying to connect. They might connect and come apart and try to connect and try to connect and come apart. And then one day it's like, boom. And now you've got, it's something that can flow through. And that can be like similar to going to a gym where you're like, oh, my muscles are tired. This is painful. It hurts. And we are not willing to sit in and go through the discomfort of that process. So we don't actually build the muscle. It's the same thing with the brain.
It's so true because I work out, so hard and it's exercising that same muscle in the brain. If I put half as much energy as I did into exercising the body, I'm sure I could have a lot better control of like mindset. I definitely feel that the gratitude thing is the biggest thing. Like when I journal and when I lead with gratitude, whether in the beginning of the day or at night, or sometimes when I get stressed, I'm like, oh, I might not be where I want to be, all these things. I actually think, well, I live in LA, right? Like I've gone to do things people would dream of doing who love my field, things like that, and I think, oh, I have Jojo, right? Like Jojo's, I'm so grateful he's still here. So you think of things like that, and it really does shift your perspective. And I do believe that a lot of the root of unhappiness almost is the future or the past. I feel like if I just think I'm not even there yet. So if I just stay today on June 10th, oh my gosh, how much more relaxed am I going to be?
Yeah, I think I'm so guilty of, I have a hard time. Like I love and appreciate being in the present, but then a lot of times my mind goes to what's going to happen then. Like for example, when I do mammograms, I'm already thinking about when I have to do my next mammogram, which is a week away. I
Yeah.
get nervous before my mammograms. I get very much, I don't like have panic attacks, but my brain keeps thinking, oh, a week from today, I'll be doing this. And so it's very hard to stay in the present because my mind is thinking about when I'm going to go for my checkup. And there's nothing to be worried about. And it's always fine, but I'm always putting myself through that stress, which I shouldn't. Like there's that little voice in me saying, like, oh, I'm going to be at the doctor soon. You know what I mean? And so it's hard to then reel it back in and be thinking, oh, I'm having a great day. I'm going to the city tomorrow. I'm with my family. I'm going to this place. It's Father's Day. I'm thinking, a week, a 2 week time slot and not keeping myself focused in the here and now. That's sometimes my struggle.
Yeah. So two things come up. One is you just have practiced that a lot. So it's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, okay, but if you practice the now, it'll be uncomfortable. It'll try, the neural synaptors are like, try to connect, and then one day it'll connect, right? So it's consistency. The other thing is I don't want the listeners to hear to not go into the future, because you can create visions, but if you do go into the future, what's the best case scenario?
Yeah.
And what might you create? And how do you balance the creativity of innovation and imagination with being present now? So in order to do that, and this is easier said than done, but you have to have fun with it, like a kid, where it's like they'll play with it and then they completely detach from it. Right. They're like, cool, I'm on to the next thing. And you're like, well, hold on, we were over here. Or if you've ever read like a book with a kid, right? Like sometimes it's like, okay, cool, what's the next? Like they're immediately gone and I'm like processing the story or maybe I'm into the story and we're 3 pages in and they're like, let's read another book. And I'm like, oh, I'm really attached to this book. It feels like, it's the yes and the human brain has a hard time with that because the human brain, and not even the brain, but the brain has been conditioned in our current society into either or.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not either or beings, we are yes and beings. And it's learning, how do you hold two things at the same time without getting attached? How do you allow two things that appear in juxtaposition, but they're really in duality, which means they're the same coin. So you can experience both sides of the coin at the same time. That might be getting too big picture, but or too like advanced in terms of what we're talking about, but it's why it gets confusing for people when they're like, I created a vision board, but you're telling me not to be in the future. And it's like, well, yeah, but create your future and also simultaneously be unattached to your future. It's confusing. Right. Yeah. Create it, but don't attach to it. Be excited about it, but surrender the how. It's confusing. It's confusing to the brain because the brain's like, I want the rule. I want the formula. Give me the black or white.
Right.
It's not, we don't live in a black or white world.
That guarantee, you want that guarantee. And
yeah. It's like, well, it's the control. It's the certainty. Yeah. And none of us can create certainty is such an illusion. Mm-hmm. But we haven't fully realized yet how much it's an illusion. And that's hard for the brain.
Yeah.
It is hard. You want to like have black and white or like be clear about something. But when I made my vision board, like you said, I kind of feel like I live in it every day because I'm doing the steps that I want to get there through my work, through the way I live my life. And I'll stare at it, but then I'll look away and I'll go on with my life and I'll go watch a show and whatever. I'm not, and I think that might be a good way of doing it because I am looking at it, I pass it and I smile, I think of things, but then like my everyday life are kind of building blocks and I'm not getting caught up in like, well, I haven't accomplished this item on my vision board today, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a part of a vision board is it's hitting different layers. Like you can feel your vision board, you can see your vision board, you can touch your vision board, you built it with your hands. Like what you're basically doing is you're telling the universe, I'd like things that make me feel what I have on there. It's then trusting that the universe is going to bring you those things, but maybe not the exact way that you thought. And it's usually even better. It's usually even better, but it's just hard because our brain gets so focused on this was the thing I'm going for. You may not even see the things that are coming around you. So if you can kind of feel your vision board, your cells will know this is what I'm tuning into.
I love that.
I was going to say that the only problem I see with a vision board is, you look at small wins and like things that you might think are great. But then when you do a vision board, if it's so concrete, so if it's concrete, do those wins kind of get lost if they don't happen? Not in the order, but if they just don't happen if you set up a time frame for that vision board, so you don't really know when it's going to happen, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, you're kind of missing the wins that are happening around you.
You can. I mean, it depends on how you use it, right? So when I look at a vision board, it's really, or just visions and I'm creating something. The reason I'm being asked to even have that as a vision in my life is because it's who I'm going to become on the journey to it. So it's not really about the destination. What we can get into destination fatigue or, where, we have, because even if you get the win, you could not feel, it's not a sustainable feeling. It was just, if all you're looking at is the win, the thing, that can feel us feeling flat sometimes. And that's also confusing.
Right.
But it's because we are looking at maybe the thing instead of the journey. And so, or a lot of people are like, when I get there, I'll feel happy. When I get there, I'll feel how I want to feel. And it's like, okay, you're taking a journey to somewhere, but enjoy the journey. So like the van has been the greatest teacher of that. The van can only go a certain speed limit in order for it to like love being itself, right? So it's slower. I ride the slow lane. I
I
really,
love this analogy. I love how you
all
talk.
of your analogies are like the kid book.
They're
thing. I'm
amazing.
like,
Oh my God.
yes, yes.
Like, I mean, I couldn't ask for a better.
You could talk forever. Well, we can't keep her
I'm
forever.
so
Go
in
on,
awe
Morgan. Go
of
on.
this interview. I'm sorry.
It's
The
okay.
connections are amazing.
She's
But
just
go
so
ahead.
good. Oh, go on.
It's also just intuition, right? I'm just allowing something to flow through me. So it's, I'm driving in the slow lane. I'm pissing a lot of people off because I'm going slow, but I also know in everything, I have to go slow to honor this being that I'm partnering with, that is my van. And so I always hear this voice like, slow down, there's no rush. Slow down, there's no rush. Like, where am I rushing to? And then also when I'm in the van, because they have all the things, right? I could either drive to the destination as fast as I can, caffeinate, be tired, burn myself out, and be like, yes, I got to the destination. Or I could be like, okay, cool. What would allow me to enjoy the journey to the destination? And it's like, oh, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to have fun here. So the journey actually becomes the most exciting part. And I feel like that's life. And again, Alexandra, that's what I watched with you is, yeah, you could be like, oh, I didn't manifest the exact thing I wanted. It's like, but I watched you manifest it. I did, right? And like who you've become and how unstoppable you are. Before we hit record, I was like, oh my gosh, your energy is so much more grounded in yourself, in your knowingness and your unshakableness. That's who you've become because you had a vision on your heart. You became a person that I believe that's who you were being guided to become. And then you just got the vision as kind of a, okay, this is one of the many ways you could get there.
Right. That is
And so
so
it's
true.
trusting that.
It's really trusting the process. And before we let you go, I want to know, what is one thing since you've begun this journey that you've really learned about yourself? I know there's so many things, but if you could pinpoint one thing that comes to mind that has really opened your eyes since the journey into Ocala, what would that be for you?
So I'm going to answer the first thing that came through, even though it may not be exactly what you're asking, but that's, again, just surrendering. Because I'm also filtering it through that could be really helpful for people. And when I make decisions from fear or anger or overstimulation, they're never the right decision. When I make decisions from my heart, a grounded state, regulating my nervous system, listening to my intuition, I've never regretted it. And so that's what I would really like people to understand is be more aware of, are you running away from something or are you walking towards something? Are you avoiding something or are you leaning in? Are you listening to yourself or are you numbing yourself? Because one side of that equation, which is the numbing, the avoiding, the overstimulating, the dysregulated nervous system, the overstimulation, the anger, the frustration, the agitation, that all leads to a life that is actually avoiding living, and we don't even realize it. Whereas when we consciously focus on what feels good, who do I feel most regulated in the presence of, or what am I doing when I feel most regulated, or what does my nervous system need, what does my body need, what does my mind need in order to really feel grounded in me? What am I doing to process the noises in my brain, the voices in my brain, the chatter in my brain? What am I doing to love myself, take care of myself? When I walk towards myself, it's such a wonderful journey. And so it just feels important to remind ourselves, like, what we practice, we become.
And it's so true because you have to really love yourself and know yourself to be able to receive and give to others. And it's funny, one thing that I want to say that I was thinking earlier before we end this is that, a lot of people, and I'm not doing this to brag, but like when I go places and I meet people that are really, how do I say it, like really friendly and just so encouraging of my energy. I've heard so many times, like I'll walk into a store, I love your energy. I love your energy. And I don't know, is that the same energy that we're talking about in terms of feeling? Like I can be stressed or I can have thoughts or I can be analyzing, but a lot of times when I'm in that moment, I love people. And that's why I originally went into social work and I love animals. And so I've had so many people say to me, I love your energy. And again, I'm not saying that to brag,
Sure.
but it's something that I hear. But I only hear it with people that are impressed by it or that want to receive it. Because the people that don't like that may come back and be like, oh, you're being hyper or you're just, oh my God. But I have had more people gravitate towards me saying, I love your energy. And because of your energy, I want to do this for you, or I want to know more about you. And these are strangers that have come into my, you know what I mean? Like when I'm
Yeah.
out in different places. I just find that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It feels like energy that someone is seeking. When they find it, they tend to be very excited. So whatever is happening in that moment, whatever frequency you're offering is something they need, is something they want. I think we can get ourselves in trouble if we want to have everyone like our energy,
Right. Right.
which I understand very intimately, versus just being authentically ourselves,
Right.
not
That's,
worrying how
yeah.
our energy is or isn't received, and also just being excited when someone can receive it, because that's wonderful. I who I am can trigger a lot of people for a multitude of reasons. I think it's one of the gifts I have, but it's really hard as a human, as the human that is me, especially because I can feel it so deeply. And so some people are not going to like my energy, and that's okay. And so just remembering, like, not everyone's going to like your energy. That's setting you up for failure. And as much as you can just be as authentic to yourself as possible. And yeah, the people, I hear intuitively a lot when I channel messages that what you're, like, it's the whole, like, what you're seeking you, but it's the answer to your prayers is also the answer to someone else's prayer. Right. So, as an example, Alexandra, you could be like, man, I really want to be on the carpet, and someone could literally be trying to manifest you on their carpet.
My gosh, yeah. That's so true.
Or like you could be wanting to manifest a friend and they're wanting to manifest you. You want to manifest a partner, and that person is thinking the exact same thing on a different frequency. Same with clients, right? Like I could be like, oh, this is the exact client that would just be so that I'm really feeling called to serve, and then all of a sudden they start showing up. And so yeah, it's energy isn't like it's good or it's bad. Energy is on a frequency of alignment.
Right.
And so if someone says, I like your energy, it's because they needed it. They are nourished by it.
And I like that because that's who I am. I may not be exact this, I'm not fake, but maybe I'll be more reserved in a certain situation and be more energetic in another. But it's just validating who I am. And like you said, authentically being myself. I've always told, like, my son, he gets embarrassed. I'm too excited or too friendly. But I'm like, this is who I am, and I'm not changing it. And if people don't like it, or if people are embarrassed by it or whatever, that's your issue. That's not my issue.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I've always felt that way. So when people say I love your energy, it's just validating who I feel I am and what I'm about.
Yeah.
I do it to my children.
It reminds me of I go up to Chicago. I try to go up at least once a year, and I have a niece and 2 nephews, and my family's up there. And I remember wearing, like, I have these mermaid leggings and like this huge headband that's got like pearls on it. I mean, I was like as ridiculously magical as I could feel. None of that bothered my niece, but and she thought that was really cool. So it's kind of funny, right? Like I didn't care if it did or didn't, but it was just interesting that, like, she wasn't seeing like the ridiculous mermaid in front of her as a adult. She was fine, but we were at a store, and the world can melt away sometimes for me if I'm like really, really in the moment. And I was with her, and I started singing and dancing, and she went, Momo, we are in public. People around. And I was like, so what? This is, So I also think that is a teaching, not that I'm trying to teach her, right? Not that you're trying to teach your son, but in being who we are, we're teaching people what freedom looks like.
Right.
So true.
If we give ourselves the authenticity of freedom.
Yeah.
And so again, I know that freedom can trigger someone who doesn't have that.
Right.
But a trigger can also open a door.
I've had people say that to me too. I'm like, I don't care. And then I keep talking loudly or whatever, or doing what I'm doing, like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And that, like, definitely allows other people to have freedom too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much of mental health is, what do you need? What do you want? What feels good to you? What's authentic to you? We can really get lost when it's, well, how do they feel about me? I think that's one of the biggest game changers I've had in my life, was when I realized that my primary question I used to ask myself subconsciously was, who do I need to be for others to like me or love me? And I switched it to consciously. I had to reprogram, and sometimes still have to reprogram, to who do I need to be in this now moment to really love being me?
Right.
And again, that's just practice.
Yeah. I was going to say, I definitely used to be someone more who would have to get like everyone's opinion before I made a decision. And now I definitely, like, I might ask, but I'm still going to go with what I ultimately feel is best. So I definitely think that's such an evolution too, because yeah, outside noise can definitely like, what are they going to think of me, or what should I do? And it's like, you know yourself better than anyone. If you actually listen to your intuition, you wouldn't have to ask everyone to make your life decisions.
Yes, and letting go of the logic needing to match it before you take a step. Because if you wait for the logic to match your intuition, you're just going to spend your life waiting. If you listen to your intuition, take a step, the logic will appear, but you have to trust the intuition first.
So true.
And that's hard if your brain's like, I need to analyze this. I need to know why. I need to know the exact reason.
Right. It's hard for us overthinkers, but no, I know. This has been amazing, Morgan. Thank you so much. Can you tell all the listeners where they can find you?
So right now I'm still at www.epicsexyu.com. So EPICSEXYYOU.com. On Instagram, I'm at the Morgan Field. So THEMORGANFIELD. And then on Facebook, I'm just Morgan Field. So
amazing.
And you're amazing. So go listen to Morgan. I mean, every time we have a conversation with you, it's just I could do this for 5 more hours. You're just incredible. And you make the questions for us so easy and flowy. I mean, I had like one question and just bouncing off your energy, things just popped up in my head that just flowed. So thank you for making this such an enjoyable, maybe hour, little over an hour.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Little over, we have to edit a little, but it's been amazing. It's been really amazing.
it's my pleasure. We won't wait 3 years next time.